Hi, my name is Edwin Acuna. I'm from HRL Laboratories, located in Malibu, California. And today I'll talk about our observation of anomalous T1 relaxation during exchange in silicon-silicon germanium spin qubits. Now, before a brief overview of T1 and spin qubit devices, let me first define T1. T1 in spin qubits is the relaxation time of spins when the spin states are split by some energy. And here are some of the early studies of spin T1 in gallium arsenide-based and silicon germanium-based quantum dot devices. In spin 1/2 qubits, the energy splitting is set by a global magnetic field, and T1 relaxation results in a flip of the qubit spin. In singlet triplet qubits, the energy splitting is set by the two-spin exchange energy J, and the relaxation studies here have typically been done versus exchange energy as well as large magnetic field, and they were done near the 1102 charge transitions, where relaxation involves both a charge transition and spin flip. It is important to note that this region of bias space is also effective for performing measurement of the qubit using polyspin blockade. There has also been extensive theory work done to understand T1 in both of the above cases, and what I will discuss in this talk is a new relaxation with its characteristic time denoted T1J, and explore it under exchange-only qubit operating conditions. We at HRL work on exchange-only triple quantum dot qubits. And here you can see an SEM of a 6-dot array in the SiGe architecture, which is similar to the device I will be discussing today. I won't be going into any details of SiGe in this talk, but let me point you to our recent NanoLetters publication and to a talk being given by my colleague Mike Jura. Our qubits exist in the decoherence-free subsystem of 3 spins, and in this scheme, the encoded 0 state is a spin singlet on spins 1 and 2, with the third spin in our system having a gauge degree of freedom, labeled M. The encoded 1 state is a bit more complicated, but the spins 1 and 2 are triplet-like, and the result is that state preparation and measurement is very similar to that of singlet triplet qubits. We don't utilize large magnetic fields or intentional gradients, and when the qubit is idling, the energy states are degenerate, and we break that degeneracy by pairwise modulation of symmetric exchange, where exchange between spins 1 and 2 looks like a z-axis rotation on the Bloch sphere, similarly to singlet triplet qubits, and exchange between spins 2 and 3 looks like a rotation about an axis we label n. And to recap the intro, I'll be discussing anomalous qubit relaxation versus exchange. For the rest of this talk, the qubit I will discuss is encoded in dots 4, 5, and 6, with the singlet initialized in spins 5 and 6. We applied a small global magnetic field of 10 millitesla. Our T2 star times are about 1.6 microseconds. The quality factors of exchange oscillations on our control axes are 52 and 20, and we can perform blind randomized benchmarking of this qubit, which allows us to characterize not just total qubit error, but also leakage of the qubit from the encoding space. For more information on our blind RB protocol with results that are from a different device, please see our Andrews et al. Publication. And for an in-depth discussion on qubit characterization, please see my colleague Nathan Holman's talk. Now, the benchmarking results of this particular qubit state that we have a total error rate of 0.5% and a leakage rate of 0.2%, results that do not agree with our charge and hyperfine magnetic noise-based error models. We expected a leakage rate closer to 0.04%, and what I hope to demonstrate is that relaxation during qubit operations may have resulted in the high leakage rate for this particular qubit. But before I discuss relaxation, let me briefly introduce an experiment we routinely perform, which we call a fingerprint scan, to observe and calibrate exchange energy, in this case for the z-axis, also denoted as J56 here. Unfortunately, I won't be covering the full experimental sequence, but I will point out that this is a 3-spin experiment that allows us to observe exchange oscillations, and that it's step 3 that leads to the fingerprint-like features of the scan, where we sweep the double dot detuning along the x-axis and sweep the x-gate bias along the y-axis. To operate our qubits, we actually modulate exchange by pulsing from an idle bias, denoted with the red dot, along the voltage vector that connects the red dot to the orange dot, which results in a lowering of the barrier between the 2 spins and increases the exchange energy, which is hopefully helpfully illustrated with the cartoon double dot energy diagrams on the right. Now, the 10 nanosecond evolution time of this experiment isn't long enough to observe qubit relaxation, and these are 3-spin experiments, where at much longer evolution times, hyperfine magnetic and charge noise dephasing processes certainly come into play and would make observing any relaxation difficult. This next experiment I'll introduce is what we actually use to observe relaxation, and actually only involves the two-spin singlet, in this case again in dots 5 and 6. We modulate exchange by performing the same sweeps here as we did in the fingerprint, but now we let the system evolve for 10 microseconds, which results in the scan shown in the middle here, with the fingerprint shown on the right for comparison purposes. And in the scan, the only dephasing we should observe is due to hyperfine magnetic noise when the singlet triplet states energy degenerate, which is the case near the idle bias, again denoted with the red dot. While at higher J, we expect the singlet to be protected from that dephasing process, and we do indeed observe a high singlet return probability in some regions of the scan, like that denoted with the blue dot. At high J, the singlet is an eigenstate of the exchange Hamiltonian, and so any charge noise affecting J wouldn't result in dephasing of the state. This upper region of the scan, however, is dark and indicates a reduction in the singlet spin population, which I hopefully made clear is not due to charge or magnetic noise, and is instead an observation of the singlet undergoing relaxation. We can characterize the relaxation time, denoted T1J, as the relaxation occurs when we pulse to high exchange by fixing J and sweeping the experimental evolution time. The amount of J applied is typically 50 to 100 megahertz along the symmetric axis, and by fitting an exponential decay to the data, we extract a relaxation time of about 5.8 microseconds. We also characterized T1J in the J45 space by swapping the spin singlets to dots 4 and 5, and got similarly striking results, where the relaxation time there is 2.7 microseconds, and we observe a similar behavior in what I'll call a T1J fingerprint, as we saw for J56. I should emphasize here that relaxation on these timescales is certainly relevant to our randomized benchmarking experiments, and we see that T1J is bias dependent, as in previous singlet triplet studies. I will show that we can increase T1J with bias tuning, and to do that, let me introduce the non-equilibrium cell, a sweep we also routinely perform and is very similar to the fingerprint, and that it also involves the third spin to let us observe exchange oscillations. But here we fix the X gate bias and sweep the adjacent plunger gate biases independently. The purpose of this scan is actually to help us determine the detuning voltage vector, but also the common mode compensation used in the fingerprint scans. And with this sweep in mind, we can also perform T1J observing versions of the scan, like shown in the middle here, where we again evolve for 10 microseconds. In red, you can see our old choice of detuning vector that resulted in the T1J fingerprint I've shown before. But by choosing a new common mode bias, as well as raising the bath dot tunnel barrier, we see a reduction of the relaxed population for this fixed evolution time. This set of scans may point to co-tunneling events with the bath as a mechanism for T1J relaxation in this case. I hope it's clear that a different choice of exchange vector and other biases allows us to operate around the relaxation, and let me point out these are tools we make routine use of in tuning our qubits. We can similarly improve T1J in the J45 space, and characterizing T1J with the new symmetric exchange vectors for both axes, we can see an improvement in the relaxation time from a few microseconds to 2 milliseconds or more, almost 3 orders of magnitude improvement in both time constants. And with this improvement, we can again perform randomized benchmarking and see a factor of 5 reduction in leakage rate to 0.04%, which we attribute to decreasing the relaxation rate, and also see an improvement in the total error rate from 0.5% to 0.16%. Now, allow me to recap with a few remarks. We have tools to observe qubit relaxation during exchange, tools that are also used to improve qubit performance. There is future work required to determine the relaxation mechanisms at play, with 2 of many possible mechanisms being co-tunneling or spin-orbit coupling. And finally, it is likely that the processes that lead to T1J relaxation are also relevant to other spin qubits utilizing the exchange interaction. With that, I'd like to thank my colleague Teresa Brecht for help in putting this presentation together, and thank you for watching this talk.